So this afternoon, we're joined by Mr. Sam Skardon, who is running for Senate 41 in Charleston and Dorchester County. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Patrick. It's exciting to be here and talking about the most important issue in the state. So always glad to have the conversation and wish we had more leaders who would focus more on it.
Well, we appreciate hearing this, the most important issue in the state. Our members certainly think it's way up at the top, but we want them to hear a little bit about you to start with. So if you would, tell us a little bit about your personal and professional backgrounds and how that shapes your views on the importance of education.
Sure. So I'll start being a graduate of Charleston County Public Schools. Grew up here in the Low Country and proud product of our public schools, and with my own eyes and my own experiences witnessed the shortcomings that have been around for generations. I mean, whether it was air conditioners that would break and we would miss weeks of classes because of it, or textbooks. I remember in 7th grade social studies, the first thing we learned the first day was everything that was out of date in the textbook. And those generational failings are still happening. I mean, the systematic failings are happening for the next generation. My friend sends her son to James Island Elementary, where they have one of the best STEM labs in South Carolina. He's been there for 2 years, but he's never set foot in that lab because they haven't been able to hire a teacher to teach in it. So even though we've made this great investment in a state-of-the-art facility, our students still aren't getting the benefit. And that's just, I can't think of a better example of a systematic failing of our system. And there's stories like that are just going to keep repeating themselves until we change the way we think about public education in South Carolina, change the way we prioritize it, and have a vision for it actually being a leader in the country instead of bringing up the rear.
Well, I want to dig in on that issue of no teacher in the classroom at James Island, because I wish that was the exception, but unfortunately it's not. As our state last year opened with over 550 vacant classrooms without a classroom teacher, and we know the negative impact that has on kids.
Right.
So in your view, as a member of the General Assembly, what steps would you push for to help our state better recruit and retain the very best teachers for our students?
Yeah, I think that's the third R I would add to that is a reward as well. So we need to recruit, retain, and reward. Obviously, salary is a component of that. It's hard to retain someone in a job if they don't feel valued, if they don't feel like their time is and their hard work is being rewarded in a way that is appropriate for the skills and the important role they're playing in our community. So yes, teacher pay is right up there with recruit, retain, reward. So are working conditions. I mean, pay isn't the only way to make someone's job a lot more enjoyable and productive and rewarding. It's making sure that teachers have that planning time where they can really focus on each student and deliver students the individual attention and results they need by being able to appropriately prepare and deliver a curriculum that's going to work for every child. If teachers don't have time to do that during a day, every kid's going to suffer because we're going to start treating them like an assembly line rather than the individual students and human beings that they are with their individual needs. It's being able to use your creativity. Teachers aren't just, made in a factory on an assembly line. Like I said, a lot of teachers have a lot of great ideas. And right now, our system in South Carolina doesn't reward or inspire any creativity. If you have an innovative lesson plan, if you have an improvement you can make on the curriculum, we actually actively discourage that in a lot of our classrooms. So a lot of teachers who are on the front lines, who are seeing needs, seeing the problems, and trying to be entrepreneurs and addressing and creating solutions, either don't have the structure in place to bring that up the chain, to actually be able to use those tools in the classroom that they're developing themselves. So I think we need to reward teacher innovation, teacher creativity, and allow them to serve their students as well as possible, and understand that in a lot of ways that means better than the curriculum that the state or the county came up with for the mass audience.
Well, a lot of the issues you just addressed were actually part of S-419, the Senate education reform package that passed the Senate but didn't make it over to the House, especially protected time, idea of schools of innovation that can be more creative. That's likely to be a topic in the coming session since that reform package didn't pass. You talked about time and innovation, but is there anything else in that package or in the area of educational reform that you feel is really important for the General Assembly to focus on in the coming year?
Yeah, I mean, we have to talk about funding too. I mean, I'm sensitive to the charge of people saying, you're just throwing money at a problem. But the fact is, in South Carolina, we've never tried that. We have chronically underfunded our schools my entire life. So, I mean, someone actually on the campaign trail said to me, you just want to keep throwing money at the problem. I said, well, we have never done that in South Carolina. We've always underfunded our schools for generations. And so, yeah, let's make sure we're smart about how we spend money, but we need to, I think we need to repeal Act 388, which has choked funding to our schools for 13 years now. It was designed to divert funding from the people who can actually pay for it and change the tax structure and change the funding structure for schools to make it, to bring it down the tax spectrum and really make it a more aggressive tax burden for people in South Carolina to pay for schools. Not only should we not be shifting the tax burden down to lower and middle class people, which 388 did, it also didn't work. It never made up for the funding that it took away. And for 13 years, ever since we passed it, the disparity in funding that we are supposed to be funding at, and the disparity in or what we are actually funding, the funded amount versus the intended funded amount, that gap has grown every year. So we got to look at repealing 388. And I think one of the frustrating things about 419, I'm sure we're going to get more into it later. I think it is an incremental improvement in some ways. I'm not against incremental improvements. I do think that it's designed in fact, the stated purpose of it from a lot of legislators was to bring us up to the Southeastern average in a lot of ways. That should not be our goal. Coming in the middle of the pack in a race of turtles does not make you a fast runner. I think our goal should be top 5 in the country, top 2 in the country. Let's set our goal high and make more than just an incremental improvement. Let's be the best in the country. Let's have that vision. And, that way, I think we'll actually start getting some real results when we're striving to be the best in the country. Because right now, even when we make improvements, we're not striving to be the best.
Just personal editorial, middle of the pack in a race of turtles. I'm a high school cross country coach, so that is now going to be firmly in my lexicon. But I want to dig in on that issue of funding that you touched on so strongly there, because at the very beginning, you talked about how our state has shortcomings that have been around for generations when it comes to education. And obviously, those are especially pronounced in our state's rural areas and our state's lower income areas. And our state has wrestled with how do you provide a adequate education. The state Supreme Court says minimally adequate, but we believe that's not even enough. How do you deliver the educational excellence that students deserve across South Carolina? You've talked about funding and the need to fully fund the base student cost, which hasn't happened since 2008. But in your eyes, what else is necessary to achieve equity to overcome these generational shortcomings?
Yeah, well, let's talk about universal pre-K, because I think a lot of teachers out there will understand that education is an art, not a science. That there are very few levers you can pull on the left side and get an exact result on the right side. Every improvement you try to make, each child is going to respond to a little differently, and the outcomes will be a little varied. Universal pre-K is one of the few cases where that's not true. You really can pull a lever, get kids up to reading level by the time they enter kindergarten, and they're going to be dramatically more successful in their educational careers and in their life beyond their educational career. Once they become productive members in our community, in our society, in our economy. Universal pre-K, getting kids to reading level, that should be the absolute goal of any education reform package, because it's what has the most proven results for students and teachers. And right now in South Carolina, there are 88,000 3- and 4-year-olds who are not in a certified pre-K program. 88,000. And we talk about incremental improvements. There was a proposal this year to expand pre-K for 12,000 students, which is, I can't do the math on the fly fast enough, but it's a small fraction of our need. It's somewhere in the range of 15, 20% of the need. We need universal pre-K, and this isn't some pie in the sky idea. Georgia does it. Florida does it. Other neighboring southeastern states do it. We should be able to do it here too and get the results that go with it, because once you do get kids on grade level young in terms of their reading skills, they are just so much more likely to be successful in all aspects of life.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Universal pre-K has been a national priority for the last 4 or 5 years, stretching back to the Obama administration. Anything that you would see as necessary reform within the existing K-12 system to achieve greater equity for students?
Yeah, so obviously we have massive disparities in our schools right now. I mentioned going to public school. I went to the academic magnet here in Charleston, uh, which I'm very proud is one of the top ranked schools in the country. When I was there, despite my best efforts, we were still very highly ranked, but we were also a very diverse school then. We were only 65% white, and we had our 10-year reunion a little while back. In the 10 years from my graduation in 2006 to 2016, the school had fallen to 3% Black students. And what happened is we have this amazing resource, this amazing opportunity in our public schools here in Charleston County, and we essentially segregated it. That is endemic of the disparities that go on all over the county. And you see it in both the results, the school attendances. There are very few, even though Charleston County, for example, is almost 50-50 in terms of white and non-white students, there are almost no schools that reflect the makeup of the county, including the county-wide magnet schools. And it's gotten worse. Like I mentioned, I went to one of those magnet schools when it was substantially more diverse and an actual opportunity for every student to learn in, and we've gotten away from that. I think we need policies that directly address the disparities. So talk about reforms needed in the K through 12 system as is. We have to have a greater focus on equity. We have to fight back that, frankly, there's been a trend of resegregation of our schools. And I think we need to push back against that because the results play out in disparities, educational outcomes, and then disparities in our communities, in our economy, in our healthcare system, in our prison system. When you have disparities in education, it creates disparities in your entire society. And we need to get that at the root in our public schools here. And unfortunately, we've moved in the wrong direction the past few years, I think.
It's a really interesting point that nobody's brought up in a town hall yet, but you're right about the body of research, about the importance of diversity within a school setting, and the unfortunate research on the underfunding of majority minority schools across not just our state, but the entire country. I want to pivot to one other funding related issue. Governor McMaster has been in the news a lot lately around education. In July, he announced that he wanted to take $32 million in federal COVID relief money and pump it into what he calls his Safe Grants program for private school scholarships for up to 5,000 South Carolina students. That's obviously tied up in the state Supreme Court right now, but he has announced that in the coming General Assembly session, he wants the General Assembly to establish a permanent version of Safe Grants out of recurring state dollars. So if you're a member of the General Assembly and the governor comes in a State of the State address and makes that pitch, what is your position on that topic?
It's a pretty quick and fast no. The reason is we've just talked about all the things we need to do, whether it's recruit and retain better teachers, universal pre-K, address the disparities, fully fund our schools. I'm not, I don't have my head in the sand here. Those all take money, and they all take money that needs to go to our public schools. One of the reasons so many families do want choice in their schools and the option to send their kids not to the neighborhood public schools is because how much work those neighborhood public schools need. And I don't think we should I don't think the state needs to be financing that choice for families while continuing to neglect the underlying cause of that choice, which is a neighborhood school that they're not comfortable sending their child to. Let's make school a great opportunity for every student who lives in its service area, and then we'll have a lot less need to help families with the decision of where to send their kids to school, because the default option should be great and they shouldn't have to look past it. And that's what we should be doing with our tax dollars, and that would be my priority as a legislator.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground on education policy, but I want to make sure that you have a chance to share your priorities with our members. So is there anything we haven't covered that you just absolutely want to make sure members know prior to casting a ballot in November?
Yeah, well, let me finish introducing myself, Patrick. I feel bad. I got carried away telling you about my 7th grade textbooks at the beginning.
That was a great story.
I actually finished telling you what I do. Thanks. So yeah, I grew up here in the Low Country. I went over to college in Atlanta at Emory University, and that's where I got connected with Congressman John Lewis. Honor and privilege of my lifetime. I got to spend 4 years on his staff, working with one of the great civil rights leaders in American history on a day-to-day basis. So his inspiration, those values are near and dear to my heart and will always guide me. I did get a little disillusioned working in a congressman's office. You can't get everything done through policy, so I went to business school and learned the private sector and tried. Ever since then, I moved back to the low country, and I've been trying to carry on that legacy of progress in a private sector way. So what I do now is small business lending, and we lend to, we're nonprofit, we're mission driven. Our mission is access to capital, and we lend to folks who can't get bank loans. So if you're turned down from a bank loan, then and you come to us, and we try to help you set up that business and build wealth that a lot of folks wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to do. That's almost entirely young women, minority, and veteran entrepreneurs. Almost everyone we lend to is one of those four groups. That's who is left out of our traditional economy when they try to lend and borrow money. But that also exposes you to so many other parts of our community. When you're working with small business owners every day, we're working with people who are making their first, second, third hire. You know, it's usually a family that might be running a hair salon or a food truck. You know, and all of a sudden they got to hire someone outside the family for the first time. They need that person to be well educated. They need to be highly skilled and trustworthy, someone who they can grow to manage and maybe even operate and own their business one day. Right now, there just aren't enough people who meet that description coming out of our public schools. And for our small businesses to succeed, we need our schools to be great. And for our big businesses to succeed. The thing I did in between, I mentioned business school and small business lending I do now. I also worked in our economic development office with some of the biggest companies in Charleston, the Boeings and Volvos and ports, and how we're going to grow our economy in a sustainable way, in a prosperous way for all of us. And I'll tell you, the biggest barrier to doing business in South Carolina right now, whether you're talking to a multinational company in Frankfurt, Germany, or one right down the street that's already got a location here, they'll tell you the hardest thing about doing business is finding folks qualified to make, to handle the jobs of the 21st century, which is wide body aircraft, electric vehicles, some of the most advanced logistics in the world. It's an incredibly high bar for our schools to produce people who can thrive in those jobs, who can grow an economy that is based on those jobs. I'm not just talking about being able to show up and do a $20, $25 an hour job, but someone who can actually grow and make that a career. And like I said, the goal is to build wealth, to grow our economy. And that means becoming managers, becoming operators, becoming owners. And the only way people are ever going to do that is if we give them the tools to do it in our public schools. And so that's, you asked what else to add. I think making that connection between our economy that I work in every day and the need for great public schools is really important for everyone to understand.
Absolutely. And I think you'll find our members agree completely that that's our end goal, is to set our kids up for success post K-12 education. Mr. Skardon, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this afternoon. I wish you all the best this fall.
Thanks, Patrick. I appreciate the time too.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.